Why MGS3 is peak? This often is a question and topic of discussion that I don't really see brought up in many places. We all know MGS3, we all love MGS3, we all probably regard it as the best game in the series, depending who you ask. I mean shit, my poll alone had so many people loving MGS3, holding it to such a high regard, so why is it that after over 20 years the game held up and stood the testament of time? This will not be a mindless glaze video. I will try to find objective and subjective flaws with this game, but I'll also focus on what makes it so good and special. Let's focus on why this game stands out from the other entries. Primarily, it is a departure from the previous entries, and specifically MGS1 and MGS2, which most people would be familiar with and accustomed to. Those games concentrated more about sneaking around futuristic compounds and facilities, and MGS3 from the get-go throws you into a hostile jungle and introduces a swath of new mechanics which you'll be using to get through the game. It immediately reinvents itself as something new, but still MGS at the core. You're given camouflage, food, and injuries as mechanics which you'll be using to get through the game. Each one perfectly complements the other, and it creates a very unique but deliberate survival experience that still accurately manages to feel and play like MGS. It takes what the original games already established and expands upon it, pushing the PS2 hardware to its absolute limits. Since the game ran on like 20 FPS on the PlayStation 2, very frequently it would dip below 30. I recently replayed MGS2 and had a lot of fun with the game, and I recall praising how the game consistently has you doing something new or different. You're never stuck doing the same thing on repeat for too long. You start off by sneaking in, going from sneaking into bomb disposal to sniping to escorting Emma, and to then swimming around and fighting with a fucking katana. It just keeps going. And it keeps the gameplay fresh, without getting stale, and it's an absolute joy to play and replay. MGS3 is slightly different in a way that it primarily has you focus on sneaking through areas and infiltrating compounds, using distractions, disguises and such. It's done and paced in such a way that makes it equally as fun and enjoyable to play without ever getting tedious or boring. I mean, I've played this game for over 20 years now, and I'm still bad at it, but it still does not get boring to me. Every time I play through it, it feels fresh and exciting. I'm always excited to jump back into it. This brings me to my main point entirely. MGS3 is without a doubt the best paced mainline entry into the franchise. It's fairly close between MGS2 and MGS1, however 3 is in my opinion perfectly paced. There is a nice distribution of gameplay to cutscene ratio, aside from a prologue which is on the longer side. Once you get to Operation Snake Eater, the game is perfectly split between gameplay, codec, cutscene. Even the auto shooter section towards the end is spaced nicely and it doesn't overstay its welcome personally. Compare this to MGS4, which despite being an excellent game is paced extremely poorly. The gameplay to cutscene ratio is insane, with something that feels like 60% cutscene and 40% gameplay. You get two amazing acts, 1 and 2, which have excellent gameplay moments. This then falls off towards Act 3, where you have to tail a guy, in Acts 4 and 5 being more cinematic rather than having extensive gameplay elements. Don't get me wrong, the game is excellent, but it's understandable that there is a lot of story since it's a grand epilogue, but it certainly hurts the pacing, especially on repeat playthroughs. The story is extremely flexible and easy to get into. This is chronologically the first game on its own, a standalone story that kickstarted the events of future games, making it easy to jump into without any prior knowledge. It covers heavy themes of betrayal, patriotism, and can easily get you emotionally vested. The point is, it's also probably why it got remade. It's a very accessible game story-wise, which doesn't require any in-depth or heavy knowledge of prior games. The presentation is also perfect. The game conveys the fact that you're in a hostile jungle really well. The visuals are tastefully represented. Even on a PS2, this game looked absolutely magnificent. The areas and the level design were perfect. Everything loops in and connects perfectly. Items are in locations that reward exploration, and the game frequently rewards you for stepping off the beaten path by giving you useful items, camo, or weapons. This actually gives you somewhat of an incentive to explore, because you can find items that will help you out later down the path, for example like when you go into the cave. And this is very similar to the game rewarding you for different playstyles, specifically non-lethal boss kills. You know, they give bosses, they give you their camo if you take them out non-lethally. And in some cases like the end, their weapons. The sound design is also something which I feel Delta missed out on. The original game stacks sounds on top of one another, creating an immersive frequency to match the backdrop. Interiors sound like actual interiors, and the jungle sounds like an actual jungle. This game was created in the early 2000s, where developers had to be very creative with how they made games. They couldn't cut corners like they do now. They had to come up with creative solutions, and they were on a tight budget. And you know, they had to get the games out and running, and everything had to be touched up by hand. And everything as a result had so much soul in it. It's like when you look at a painting in a museum, and I know this may sound corny, and it feels like an artist imprinted a part of their soul and DNA into the work of art. It has that human element to it that you don't really get with games these days, because it feels like everyone's cutting corners, engines and everything designed to just speed development up, you know, because the shareholders are constantly breathing down people's fucking necks. It's a really toxic thing in my opinion, and it hurts games, but not everyone sees it that way, unfortunately. Whilst I'm not against AI strictly in a sense, I don't think that it should be used for art specifically. Rather, it should be used as a tool to speed up other processes, but we know that will never happen. However, I digress. It all comes down to the perfect storm that is Metal Gear Solid 3. A game that has so much charm and humor mixed in with Japanese banter and fourth wall breaks. Excellent is really an understatement. What really sells this across is the fact that this game came out during a different time period. This was at the turn of the century, gaming was already popular by that time, but the industry as a whole was rapidly expanding and seeing unprecedented growth, which in turn brought many more people into the fold. My point here being that MGS3 was growing, and gaming was also growing as an industry, and many people got into the series when 3 released as well. I personally made my way back into the series when 3 released. The only entry I played up until that point was 1. I played 1 and then I kind of forgot about the franchise until I saw MGS3 on the pirate disc that my dad brought. And then I played MGS3 and I was like, holy shit, this is good. And that made me get back into the franchise. I feel personally that all makes sense. The game was good, and due to where the industry was as a whole at the time, it really snowballed and captured the hearts of many people. So what are the actual flaws and problems with the game? I had to look really hard into this to even find anything. And I did play this game on stream recently, and I haven't completed it yet, naturally, because it's a replay. But you know, I've got a general idea of what's there. So here goes. The game, in my opinion, is fairly short. There are a lot of cutscenes, yes, but if you skip all of them and focus on the gameplay, it clocks in at around 10 hours, maybe less, depending on how skilled the player is. Makes me wish there was more of the game to experience and see. I think speedrunners can probably do it in an hour and a half, maybe 2. The controls have aged rather poorly. They are clunky, and at the time, pressure sensitive buttons really got a lot of NPCs killed with the throat slit. It's not to say that they're strictly bad controls, but by modern standards they are like kind of dated. My brain is so used and integrated to these controls that I couldn't even play Delta on the new control scheme. I had to use the classic one. And to this day they can be quite troublesome to navigate, and this comes from someone that's actually, you know, used to them. Like, I'm really used to these controls and I still make mistakes all the time. And you know, even Delta didn't really fully fix this for me, because the new control scheme kind of felt out of place too. So if anything, made the controls worse, and they kind of felt all over the place. The escort section with Eva towards the end of the game is a slog to play through. Regardless of how many times I played the game, it's kind of annoying to deal with, and the only saving grace here being is that it's fairly short. But you know, it's a small thing to deal with. If I was to say a part of this game is like a part of this game that I don't like, it would be the part where you escort Eva. Now, the constant menuing is also very tedious. You know, you picked up a new weapon, oh, I need to open the menu, go into my backpack and equip it. Same thing for camo, same thing for items and food. It gets particularly gnarly when you're trying to keep your camo index high. You have to circumnavigate the menus to switch stuff on the fly. I don't think Delta fixed this issue either. It's a small issue, but it's an issue nonetheless. MGS2, for example, didn't have this issue, because in MGS2, when you pick up an item, it gets added to your inventory automatically, and you can just equip it as you see fit. But that created another problem, because the inventory was then flooded with a bunch of stuff. Shooting mechanics didn't really see any improvement over MGS2. They're still mostly the same. If you want to take precise shots, you have to stand and aim. You cannot move and shoot sort of like you can in future entries. You can run and gun, but that's kind of not the same as, you know, doing these precise shots. And the Mark 22 is fucking OP as shit, man. I mean, seriously, you can track everyone from anywhere if you're accurate enough. And there is no bullet drop. It can trivialize the entire game from the start. And Delta tried to balance this, but it really wasn't difficult to adjust your aim because they tried to incorporate bullet drop. But the worst thing I noticed is in MGS2, guards would also regularly report via radio. If they suddenly go missing or don't report, a support unit gets sent in to their location immediately, something I don't believe even happens in MGS3 unless they're directly talking on the raid. Call it what it is, it could be because the game's set in the 60s, the other game's set in the 2000s. I don't know, it feels like a small step back to me. Another issue I kind of noticed or had was with the stamina bar itself. Other than making your aim shaky and making your tummy grumble, there is really no disadvantage to having a low stamina. Maybe your health doesn't regenerate because the whole regen system for your health is based on stamina, but other than that, there's not really any reason to run around catching animals and eating them, unless, like, if you're just casually playing through the game. You can, if you're running and gunning, for example, you can just not eat animals, right? Or just eat food which there's plenty of in the game, to be honest with you. So like the stamina bar kind of, it serves a purpose, but it doesn't really fully serve its purpose. And that being said, these are kind of all the issues or flaws I could find with the game. These issues are extremely minuscule and they don't really detract from the overall experience. It just goes to show how deep you have to dig into this game to actually find flaws or problems, which are mostly subjective. Me not liking menuing doesn't necessarily mean you will dislike it either. You know, I've been playing this game for a long time. Maybe it's just something I've grown to dislike. Who knows? That being said, here you have why I think MGS3 is peak. And yeah, if you've liked this video, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'd appreciate any support I can get. Peace.